think I used to be pretty all or nothing. And it would frustrate me because I wouldn't really want to commit to something, or I wouldn't want to start something. And so entrepreneurship has taught me you can't be like that, because if you would just never do it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Staple Exchange podcast. Today, we are talking to Ashley, who most of you probably know from White Stallion Studio, and she is the graphic design partner for Farm & Fur. So if you have worked with us on a brand design, you have definitely worked with Ashley and chatted with her as well. She does all of the logo design and graphics for our Farm & Fur clients. But long before she had her design business, we actually met over 10 years ago when Ashley was managing a horse farm in New Jersey. I moved in with my mare as a boarder, and very soon after actually started working for her on her day off. Fast forward a few years later, when Ashley decided to move off of the farm, I actually took her position as the barn manager, and then she switched roles and worked for me on my day off. So we have had this really fantastic working relationship together long before we partnered Farm & Fur and White Stallion Studio. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to have Ashley on the podcast, aside from all of the obvious ones, is that not a lot of people probably know that she has both a virtual design business, but also an in-person business that she runs from Bucks County. And I think she has a really unique way of telling the individual stories of how she started both and how both have evolved into what they are today. And I'm very excited for you to all hear the story as well on our episode. So, Ashley, a lot of people who are listening to this today will know you from White Stallion Studio, but you actually have two different businesses. White Stallion Studio, working with Farm & Fur, doing logo design, and also reward-based Equestrian, which teaches fellow equestrians about clicker training and positive reinforcement. We're going to dive into both of these businesses today. I love that they're two businesses that are very different from each other, and I think we have a lot to learn from how you have started and structured both. But I want to start with White Stallion Studio first, because to me, this is where it seems like your entrepreneurial journey really kicked off. So I want you to first take us back to that time in your life when you either first realized you had a true love for art, or you first submitted a drawing or had a project that made you say, I'm actually really good at this.
It's kind of, I mean, it's funny. I think it's been like forever. I do feel like art was one of those things that was very innate. My mom, I know, has like stuff from my school, and I would draw pictures when I was supposed to write essays, and like from a little kid, like kindergarten. Um, so I just always loved drawing. I think I started to realize I was good at it when I got older. I definitely had some really good art teachers that recognized some of my talent and kind of helped me develop that. I do always think it was portrayed as more of a hobby back then. So bringing it into like eventually doing it in college, it wasn't my first thing. It sort of was the second thing, just because people painted it as a little bit unrealistic. But no, I've been doing art. I feel like the art and animals thing has been forever. Like it's just something I feel like, unless someone can tell me otherwise, I just remember it always, both of those things always being there.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when we first met, you were still running Gray Oaks and you were doing custom pet portrait commissions on the side. So would you say that was your first introduction to how you could actually make money through your art?
Yeah. And I'd done that. I had been doing that for years as sort of like gifts, and then it sort of turned into, hey, you can pay me. And then I finally went into the more business aspect of it. And I think that was White Stallion Studios' start. I was just going to do, I think, colored pencil type portraits or a little bit of painting I used to do. I kinda just liked everything, and it took a while to figure out I wanted to do, like, the wood burning and the ornaments and stuff like that. I wanted to be just, like, a little more unique. Um, I also just always would challenge myself with something weird, like, I never could just paint or whatever. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna try this other random thing."
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that is the first time I found I could make money.
I do think as an artist, tell me if you agree. I feel like artists always have that one medium that's like their thing or kind of becomes their specialty. And it sounds like you've kind of dabbled in a couple. I remember when I was a boarder at Gray Oaks, you were managing the barn and you got your first wood burner and you made those wood burn stall signs for a
Mhm.
bunch of us in the barn. So you had us give you portraits of our horses and you actually physically wood burned them to hang as stall signs on our horses' stalls. And from there, I know you did a lot of wood burning and color pencil work with the ornaments. Knowing you throughout this journey, I almost feel like the ornaments was one of the most popular things that you offered through White
Mhm.
Stallion Studio. Like every year, I feel like people in our community, but then even people that you would meet online were so excited to get these ornaments. So, is that something that you think you found or discovered accidentally, or was it a little bit more intentional in thinking this is something that I know I can kind of quickly turn out for people and have some urgency around a holiday season versus just trying to get these bigger portrait commissions?
It was sort of accidental, but then became recognized as what you described. Like, there's a lot of portrait artists out there, and a lot of them are really good, and, um, it's just easier to I guess a lot of stuff with art is also relative to what people will pay, and to charge money for a big portrait and to actually represent your time, I think has been the age-old struggle for
Mm.
artists. So if you can't draw and you're paying someone else, you will only, though, pay what you're willing to pay. The ornaments was a way to be a little more accessible, which is still important to me, like, making money obviously is important, but and, representing your time. But, yeah, it was definitely one of those things where I wanted it to be easy for people to be
Absolutely.
excited to commission me, not because, like, they had to save up all these thousands of dollars to pay me for something. I don't know if it's also being creative, like, sometimes I'm okay with spending a long time on one project, but in other
Mhm.
terms, like, I wanna jump around and I wanna move through different things or different subjects or different mediums. That's sort of where I think that interest comes. So, the ornaments helps because they're quick, it's easy to connect with the other person and talk about their animal real quick and just
Mhm.
get a little information and then do a lot of them and that type of stuff.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of interesting thinking back to how when you first started White Stallion Studio, you became known for putting people's pet portraits on these ornaments. And now in the horse industry, I think you've become known for taking portraits and pictures of clients' horses and turning them into logo designs, which is so important because so often the clients that we work with, their horse is either the inspiration for why they started their business or really at the heart of the brand. And of course, being on this client journey together, I know a little bit about what that transition was like, but I don't think that our audience really knows what that transition was like for you going from doing custom portrait commissions to actually being a digital designer and really being a self taught graphic designer. So,
Yeah.
what was that first spark or moment or project where you kind of said to yourself, I think we really have something here and it's time to go all in on actually learning how to be a graphic designer using all these Adobe products rather than being a what I would call, I guess, physical artist?
Uh, that's hard to pinpoint one. I feel like a lot of the stuff in my journey for like career and everything has always just been like sort of that process, that journey, not necessarily one sparking moment, which I think happens for a lot of people. I do see how a lot of my stuff in the past then led to stuff, but it's sort of that
Mm.
slow, I definitely had made logos before, didn't think much about it, just was like, "Oh, I can draw something," and, it needed to be free or I didn't wanna pay someone to do it, so I was gonna figure that out. But I definitely think you came to me with some ideas that you needed for some of your therapeutic stuff, some
Yeah.
other things. I'm trying to remember. It feels so long ago.
Yeah,
But
that's
you were
true.
kind of like, "Can you do this?" And I was like, "Sure, probably." Like, I don't know. I mean, I was like, I can draw it." And so then me and Google and YouTube got to be friends, and, um, I think you definitely were like, We should do this as a business, so you need to figure this out." And I was like, "Okay." But
Here
definitely
we
the
are
first
6 years
couple
later.
I know. Definitely the first couple of projects when they turned out, not that I didn't think they would turn out, but, like, when you really saw the end product, it was like, "Okay, like, this can work, and it can, like, kind of I can see this evolving, and I can see this being easier as you go." I also think I originally had went to school for architecture.
Oh,
And
that's
I think some
right.
of my style of drawing is a little bit architectural,
Mm.
um, and already has some design qualities. And talking to other designers, I mean, I did go to art school after the architecture bit. Um, and when I talked to other designers, a lot of the foundations are the same. There's a little bit more about certain types of communication with graphic design, but they're still very foundationally the same. So I didn't find it like shocking or anything. Like I could already visually see composition and how things related. So and then just I always did the portraiture. I'm not sure why I was drawn to that, like being able to sort of copy something and get to know it or like really convey it. That was always something I was drawn to. So that sort of just fit right in there perfectly.
Yeah. You have, of course, always had the talent, which I think is the foundation for any artist. And then it's almost like you just had to learn how to apply those skills
Yeah.
digitally. I think the first project that we did together, but it was also very casual. It wasn't superficial. I'm pretty sure we just did it for free, was for Happy Tales therapeutic riding.
Yes.
When we needed a logo, and at the time we were working with a design agency. We were actually working with a graphic
Oh,
design
really?
agency, and the designer at the agency was talented, but she wasn't a horse person. And I
Oh,
remember
that's right.
it was such a specific need that we had for someone who knew the composition of a horse and kind of how to get the
Yeah, it was like
conformation
all
right.
clip art, right?
It
Like
was
her
all
horses were
clip
like clip
art.
art or something. Yeah,
Yes,
I
and
remember.
that was the missing piece we needed, was the hand-drawn
Mhm.
version of a horse that, like, perfectly represented the horse in the way that we wanted it to be shown. And do you think that that's kind of your sweet spot, is the fact that you're not just using clip art or putting graphics together? I don't know if everyone knows this, but every single time you create a logo design or a graphic, it starts with a hand sketch
Mhm.
drawing from you first.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've had comments like that from some of our clients where they hired a graphic designer and then didn't work with them because they were frustrated by not knowing the terminology or, if you have to describe certain types of tech or your certain type of, discipline you fit into. While I've not done every single one of those things, I at least have a more unique understanding of what horses look like and it's beyond just like looking at references because a lot of times I am doing research and I am looking at stuff, but I kind of have a sense of what's correct or what's visually appealing or what someone is looking for when they say certain words. I can relate that back to what I need to draw and shape it accordingly.
Yeah. It's important because I think, and we notice this a lot in the clients that we work with, the best businesses solve some of the biggest problems. And I think that this has been a problem that we were able to solve for the horse industry, was you can't just use stock graphics or someone who doesn't know how to accurately represent a horse in these logo designs. And that was kind of where we first fit into the horse industry. when we got started. You know, you and I have conversations every day about client feedback. And I'm curious, thinking about yourself as a branding expert, but also an artist, how do you balance that feedback that we ask for from clients? Because on one hand, they're critiquing your work, but on the other hand, that feedback is so necessary for us to be able to fulfill that end vision. So, were there any mindset shifts that had to happen for you and kind of realizing it's not criticism or critique, it's feedback that's necessary to get to that end goal?
Yeah, I think you have to depersonalize a lot of it. I think that was a journey too with a lot of things, even, in the horse industry and just life and communicating with people. I mean, it relates to horse stuff. Like behavior is communication. So someone not liking something or sounding angry or getting upset is not always as straightforward as you think. And when you
Yeah.
take yourself out of the equation, you usually can kind of pinpoint or figure out what's going on a little bit better. I've learned to just ask questions. Like if I feel there's definitely some people's communication styles that feel really affronting. Some people are so sweet and deliver even criticism very well. I would say you just notice people's skill levels, if that
Yes.
makes sense. And
The way
some
they
people
communicate.
sound rude and some people sound different. So I've just learned to be like, okay, it's not about me. I can know what's good that maybe just still doesn't relate to that person, and that's okay. I think design taught me that for sure, that like, because not every brand is for every person.
Oh,
Learning about your ideal client and stuff like that, and having that sort of introduction into art definitely helped shift that a little bit to be like, okay, I see it this way, but this person has their vision of their brand in their head and maybe also has some personal preferences. Although that's a tricky one because sometimes we're trying to help guide them to be like, hey, your personal preference is not really what we want here. Like, we need this to be conveyed. But most of
yes.
the time, it's really rewarding to sort of work that out and figure it out with the person. I'd say like 90% of the time, it's like a great experience anyway, when it's like kind of a tricky um, situation with the feedback and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It ends up turning out even better because we didn't discredit that person or say, like, no, our idea is better. We just
Yes.
tried to figure out how it could work.
No, it's true because, your job as a logo designer and our job as brand designers is to kind of lead clients on that journey sometimes, and there's a time and place for personal preferences, but also we always want it to make sense for their end goals or their brand or their business. And there is sometimes a little bit of that education that comes along the way of kind of helping people realize that maybe this is the better direction to go. So I think that makes a lot of sense. When you think about how clients give feedback, is there anything that you almost would want them to know about how to give better feedback? This is something that you and I talk about all the time, and we always tell clients, you don't have to sugarcoat it. We want you to be honest and upfront. So, putting yourself in the client seat, what are some ways that you wish people would maybe give better feedback so that you can execute?
Uh, I think not apologize because a lot of people, I think, feel that that's going to smooth something over and they spend a lot of time apologizing. I'm really sorry. I want to make this change. I'm really sorry.
True.
I want to do this. So it's really not necessary to apologize. But I do think maybe just be like thinking about how your words can be more clear and, you know, being honest. I think people struggle to be honest, and maybe that's where the apologizing comes in sometimes too, or the abrasiveness comes in because they're almost, I think, feeling emotional or having a hard time saying, I don't want to tell you I don't like this." Never really offended if someone says they don't like it. I actually struggle when they can't describe why. I think it's fine to say you don't like something, but if you don't really give me any other guidance, and that's where that clarity would come in of like having a bigger vocabulary and having an ability to say, like, well, it's because this seems busy or this, and I get it. Some people don't have the artistic vocabulary, but showing that you took the time to at least try to think through that process or even go look at other logos and say, well, I don't really know the difference, but this one is what I like and
Mm.
this is what I don't like here. It is kind of frustrating when people just say, well, I just don't know. We're like, well, you do because you obviously had a reaction, but you're sort of expecting me to come in and read your mind versus
Mm.
you taking a little bit of time to really like think and process and come up with things to
Yeah.
help move things forward. Unfortunately, not a mind reader. Sometimes feel like we are good at that on occasions, and definitely feel like some people expect that from us, and feels really good when you get something the first time, but totally not necessary and not always normal to have that happen.
Yeah, but most of the time, it's a little bit of a journey, and it's a little bit of that trial and error. You know, we often are working across multiple design projects at a time, where sometimes we could have as few as maybe 4 logos that we're working on at a given time, or we've even been up to, like, 7 to 8 logos at a time. As an artist, a creative, as a designer who kind of always needs to stay fresh and creative and engaged, how do you balance switching gears from one project to another? Have is it Does it just depend on what the project is at that time and what you're excited about? Or do you kind of have like tools that you can go back to and say, I need to take a beat. This is what I'm going to do so that I can refresh myself?
That's a good question. It's both, and it's evolving all the time. I think that I like that word, like tools or skills, because you can't always totally rely on your just creativity or feeling like doing something. Oh, I definitely, it's crazy because sometimes it makes me anxious when there's too many projects open, but other times that's really works. And it does, I think, depend on the project. Sometimes we weirdly have these clump of projects that are similar. That can
Yes.
really help for whatever reason. Like, I think the mindset just sort of flows across. But I think creative stuff, people don't realize how easy it is to get burnt out, and it is a lot of pressure. Like, someone is asking you to, as much as it's innate talent to some degree, like, it's still, like, effort, it's energy. So, I am learning to actually, like, take a break better. I used to try to push through and, like, sort of sit there all day and struggle over stuff, so I either shift to something new and see if that sort of helps the brain, drink another cup of coffee. But recently, I have found that working, like, if I just take a day off, um, and sort of get over yourself in the sense that you may have to communicate sometimes, "Hey, I can't meet that deadline." It's balancing when to know, like, "Hey, I just gotta stay up and meet this deadline and figure it out," versus saying, "This is gonna help no one. I'm not actually gonna provide you with anything good, even if I meet the deadline." And just be honest, and it's humbling and tricky sometimes because you do feel judged or you feel like, I mean, I know I'm, like, kinda more type A perfectionist person, so you feel, like, bad or guilty that you didn't do something for someone when you said, but just getting more comfortable communicating that to people, sort of letting them know that things are gonna be flexible because it's not this exact science. I can't just, like, reach in my brain and poof, have your logo all the time.
Yeah.
But it's definitely using those tools of just sort of thinking to myself and pausing for a second and being like, "What's gonna help the situation? How can I take a break? Can I just go for a walk?" Sometimes that helps, and or can I just eat a real meal and not like cheese and
Not
crackers
like a
or
little snack.
whatever you're scrounging around for. So it's like life skills, right? I mean, it's really what being an entrepreneur is like. I think because people take for granted that you don't have a boss or you don't have like someone else structuring what to do when, like, you kind of get to decide all that, and that is so freeing and fun and nice, but also like you're usually most people who are entrepreneurs are their own worst boss. Like, they
Yes.
work themselves to death or just don't don't take care of themselves. Um, so it can be a struggle to figure out that balance. But I think people really appreciate when you just are real and say it plainly instead of trying to pretend that you have it all together or um yeah, Like, you can still know your skills and still know what you can deliver while also being human.
It's true. I think that's something that we have gotten a little bit better at over the years in terms of our design process because it's so true. You can't just flip a switch when you wake up in the morning and say, "I feel great. I have all of these ideas. I can't wait to get on my computer and create and design and execute." It sometimes ebbs and flows, and there are
Mhm.
just some days where you just wake up and you're like, "I will drive myself crazy if I sit here and just try to think of a million different ways or directions that I could take this, and there's only so much inspo you can get from Pinterest, and it like you said, it is so worth it to sometimes just take that moment for yourself and recharge outside of work, and I think this is a good way to transition a little bit into where you're at now in Bucks County in Pennsylvania, because you have what I would call is a little homestead or a farmstead. Would you kind of consider it
Yeah,
a
it's a farm.
farmstead?
Yeah.
So you have a barn in your backyard, which is every horse girl's dream. You have chickens, you have a garden, you have ducks, and you now have 3 horses there. 2 are your own, 1 is a boarder. Would you say that transitioning that time between being at your computer working on design projects for clients and then having the ability to just walk out your back door and then be fully immersed in horses in a different way has kind of helped keep that creative spark alive for you?
Um, I feel like I've always had that in some capacity because I've always had a horse job or something else to bounce between. I don't know how I'd feel if this was, like, the only thing I did. I don't know. I can't envision it. Like, I just never have I don't know if that's, like, a horse person thing, like, or just multi-passionate thing. Like, I think some people have that one thing, and I think some people just have a bunch of things. Um, I definitely think it helps, it breaks up the day. Sometimes it feels like they're competing, and that's annoying when you have to finish everything for everything at once. Testing the time management and stuff like that, but, um, yeah, it's my ideal working environment. I'm sure I could have a corporate job or something like that, but I definitely like it. Like, I enjoy it better when I have the flexibility to sort of move things around or have the
Yeah.
different things I do.
Be inside and outside. Now, this might change day to day, but something you just mentioned made me think of kind of an ideal daily routine. This is something that I hear people on podcasts just like this talk about all the time. Some people swear by a daily routine. Other people kind of need the flexibility and the freedom to not be stuck in such a regimented routine. Where do you think you fall there? And do you feel like you've kind of cracked the code of like an ideal way that you structure your day?
No, because every time I think I get a routine going, like, something changes it, but so I think some of the things I've realized is there's just different places you're at in life where routine can be more important, than others. I definitely think there's, like, a security in having a routine. I definitely like the structure of it, but then I've gotten too regimented where then I feel overwhelmed because if I can't get everything done in that time or, I wrote it down, I thought it was gonna go how it was gonna go, and it didn't, then it would sort of I think I used to be pretty all or nothing, and it would frustrate me because I wouldn't really wanna commit to something or I wouldn't wanna start something, and so entrepreneurship has taught me you can't be like that because if you would just never do it. Um, so I think right now I have, like, some days where there's more of the routine happening, but then I've sort of discovered that I do need, like, 1 day a week where I almost, like, work all day, and I'm not, like,
Mhm.
pulled out of that, um, space, but then I need, like, 1 day where I don't work at all, like, at least 1 or 2 days where I don't work at all because I
Yeah.
literally have to do that outside with the horses or a project or taking care of the property. I
Yes.
almost need a full day for that where I'm not getting pulled out of that. So, I can't have the same necessarily routine every day, but I definitely sort of have some sort of flow thing happening
Yeah.
where I just make sure I check those needs off each week to some degree.
Yes, and I think too, I've spent so much time trying to crack the code in time blocking, and that's
Mhm.
definitely been something that I think has been very helpful to your point where you set one specific day to maybe even just work on one specific project. Like I like to do that with the websites a lot. If I'm starting a website, I will only put that website on my schedule for that day because sometimes when you get pulled out of it, you kind of get that ADD and it takes so long to jump back into it and refocus,
Mhm.
and you just lose that groove. You said something earlier about kind of the type A and maybe not wanting to start something unless you can finish it or really do it right. This is such a specific memory that I have, but it's almost creepy that I remember this. When we were at Gray Oaks together, you had your Ford pickup truck, and on the back, you had a bumper sticker. It was like a golden retriever with a tennis ball, and it said,
Mhm.
anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And I would look at that bumper sticker on your car like every single day at the barn. And I think it is such a beautiful, accurate representation of your approach to any endeavor that you go on because you do always want to do something right and see it through. And that's something that I've
Mhm.
always admired about you. So, kind of hearing you talk about how you've kind of learned the ebb and flow is just really nice to hear because I do think that is such like an inherent part of your personality is I want to deliver something the best that I can.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably why we've always worked really well together too. And I would say that um, that part of having a team helps structure some things. And we were talking about the creativity before. I think that helps in bouncing off of someone too, like just to, I don't have brain cells, but maybe you do today. And we
Yeah.
can sort of trade and do stuff. But yeah,
It
that's so funny because I feel like that magnet was definitely, I guess it is definitely part of my personality. It was for it's representing my dog who is obsessed with tennis balls. Um, but yeah, when you've got a good thing, you want to keep
yeah.
doing it. But yeah, do it right and definitely.
Well, and that was something, to kind of take it back to our Gray Oaks days together, that was always something I saw come through in how you also managed the barn. I mean, so far we've really been focusing on you as an artist, but people might not realize that long before that, you were a barn manager. That's how we met. And when I tell you guys that this barn would be pristine, you could eat off the floor, truly, which most horse girls probably wouldn't think twice about doing, but it's so true. There was not a fly in sight. There was not a rogue shaving on the barn aisle. It was always perfect and beautiful. And you brought a lot of that into riding and training as well, because once I became a boarder, you became my trainer. And over the years, I've seen the way or your approach to training shift a lot. And I really want to get into your other business, which you now offer in person in Bucks County. So, kind of transitioning from your artist brain to your training brain, I want to know a little bit more about reward based equestrian and if there was a specific moment that made you have that mindset shift or made you think a little bit differently about your approach to training?
I think my answer will be like everything else. It was a journey, it was a process, but I think a lot of this business stuff transferred over, like my mindset in going from a little more rigid to um, being flexible and being able to change. I've definitely seen that as I've grown in, I've always liked, I guess, knowing the answer, or I've always been a very serious horse person where I didn't just ride, I did all the other stuff. And it's why I ended up in care jobs or management because I was obsessed with the diets and the this and then that. And then as my knowledge grew, um, I think I started just questioning a lot of things and being like, and not getting very good answers. and having people be like, "That's just how it is." And then obviously my horse and my change of horses, shifted a lot of that too. I think I was really blessed in that my first horse was just super fun and compliant and didn't really give me a hard time with anything. I mean, he had a lot of health issues that I think started me in a compassionate sort of sense. Like, I couldn't ride him for a lot of the time that I had him. Um, so that helped a little bit start that shift of like, hey, you really like
Mhm.
horses, not just riding and training. Although I love aspects of riding and training, which is why I liked teaching. Um,
Mhm.
I
Now,
liked
is that
feeling like,
first horse is Pete, right?
yeah. So
And
that's
a
the
lot
white
of
stallion. He
okay.
influenced everything.
Like we said at the beginning, the horse is often the heart of the brand and the inspiration, so I
Yeah.
wanna come back to Pete, but keep going.
Yeah, I feel like now that seems so long ago, and I don't always remember, like, as many details, as you would, like, your current horse, but I remember, like, the overall feeling of being with him and, um, just growing and learning under the people I knew then, and just how that just kept going until I was sort of on my own, and I started teaching, at a camp program and then sort of just in other lesson barns, and just how things I was struggling with when I sort of had an aha moment or could figure out, that was what I liked teaching because I felt like I could relate to people. I could relate to struggling with your position and feeling like your trainer is giving you advice that you don't know how to fix or you don't know how to change. A lot of it's communication. A lot of it fits in with the
Mhm.
art stuff and just that being able to clarify things for people and make it relatable. Um, Maybe not every person understood what I was saying, but there was definitely, I found a subset of people that really wanted sort of my style of approach to stuff like that. And then, you know, never did I think I'd go from just like competitively riding and teaching to being, like, more woo-woo and, like, consent-based and, positive, but it also still makes sense because I clicker trained dogs for a really long time. I always wanted a good relationship with my horse. I was always looking for that sort of ability to communicate with them and
Mhm.
just trying different things out. So, now that clicker training has become a little more popularized, like, it just was the right timing, it was the right snowball effect of things happening, with my current horse, and I think it's like the aha moment when you deliver a logo to someone and they're like, "That's it." Like, I took the
Yes.
course I took and I was like, "That's it. This is what I want to do. I I connect with this." Like, it was what I was searching for. So, and then my personality is just the type that I go kind of all in, like we were discussing, and I like to be educated to a level that I can sort of educate back, and I think that probably goes along with White Stallion Studio too, in that we are sort of educators, not just creators,
Mhm.
mostly because it also helps you learn. Like, it's not just like, "Oh, I want to tell you everything I know." Sort of being able to teach sort of helps you continue to grow that mindset because some
Yeah.
people challenge you and some people say stuff and you're like, "Hmm, I have to think about that," or, "How would I describe that better?" And do I actually know that thing? Do I have to go learn some more myself? Because we kinda do that a lot, like, we will shift to
Mhm.
periods of education, for ourselves, um, and checking out what's going on in the industry and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that's something, it's funny because we both have a little bit of that teaching background. We both
Mhm.
have taught riding lessons at some point in our lives, and like you said, I think that has helped us a lot in how we work with clients now and serve clients now because you do have to be able to read people right away and be able to either meet them where they're at or gently guide them up to the level where you know they could or should be and kind of maybe help them reach decisions on their own. I think every important horse that comes into our lives teaches us something. You mentioned that Pete, it sounds like, was the horse who taught you didn't have to be riding to enjoy horses. And I know that your current horse, Ransom, is the one who really kicked off a lot of the clicker training and positive reinforcement for you. What has been the most important lesson you've learned from Ransom in the last couple years? I mean, I'm sure there are a lot.
Um, I guess if I had to sum it up, um, maybe it's that your horse is always right. Um, I think mainly because we tend to we tend to project a lot of things onto our animals and probably do that. I mean, I think a lot of people do that with clients or other people they interact with too. And so figuring out that a lot of this relates to business stuff, which is crazy, but that depersonalization of, just because they're communicating something to you that you don't like doesn't mean it's always about you. And how can you figure out what they're trying to say and how to have a relationship with them that's not just based on your own needs or your own enjoyment, but that becomes mutually enjoy. Like, I know for me, figuring out that Ransom really didn't like a lot of the stuff that he was being asked to do, not just because he didn't like it, but because there was either physical problems or some of his needs weren't met, or I didn't factor in the stress he was under from showing or traveling, or just my expectations and my goals. That really, a horse does not wake up and go, yeah, I want to be your show horse and go all in with all that stuff. um but that didn't mean that he couldn't like some of it and doing things with me, that it just had to be different. And I think having my own relationships where I felt stuck and like someone wasn't really listening. I think a lot of people can relate to that. You've probably had, I don't know if it's your family or a friend who just, you felt like it was all about them, or there was not a good way to communicate to them where you got through to them. I mean, that has happened very rarely with clients, but everybody I think can think of someone who
Yeah.
you just, they're not getting it. They're not getting what you're expressing. And that's frustrating. So, but also kind of freeing when you sort of figure it out and let go of that expectation. So that's one of the biggest things he's taught me, is that he can communicate. It's not always personal, but he always knows himself. He's always right about himself.
Mm.
And I don't have to question him or tell him it's stupid or tell him it's silly. Um, Honestly, it's stuff I've heard in therapy. It's stuff I've heard, like, I feel like it's just good advice for humans in general. Like, you should be able to sort of own yourself, and seeing him sort of own himself, or actually me let him own himself, because he always
Mhm.
knew what he, you know, needed and wanted. That's been really different. And I find a lot of people just want to feel like their horses like them. Um, but there's like this weird balance where you also have to be, you have to be like yourself. You can't just expect like
Mhm.
an animal to validate you. Just like people, and even just like business. I think that probably has been, you got to separate your identity from your business, because you can change your business. Businesses come and go, and success comes and goes. And it's not always about if you were good enough or not. Like, it's just about, it's just a part of you. It's just
Yeah.
one thing you do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to how you have taken two different passions in your life, and passions that almost started as passions became hobbies and now have become businesses. I I think that's so important. I mean, that's one of the ways that we will all have longevity in our businesses is if it is truly reflective of us and is something that we truly love. And I do feel as though, knowing you for so many years, I think you are so incredibly intuitive with horses. Like working with you as a trainer and now seeing the way that you kind of talk about your own horses. I love the education that you put out on your reward-based equestrian Instagram. What would you say is one of the things that you wished people knew that their horse is trying to tell them?
Oh man, a lot of things. Actually just my For You page this morning shared a whole lot of terrible videos. People just have a lot of misinformation and like this underlying idea that horses are trying to manipulate you and the whole respect thing that has been drilled into a lot of our heads. It's just like they're not going around thinking that. We're going around thinking that we deserve some sort of um respect and I just love animals because 'cause they're honest and they're not manipulative. I mean, they do know how to do what's been reinforced, but a lot of times they're missing a lot of resources they need.
Yeah.
There's just so much that goes into it that we can't just you can't just label your horse and say, "My horse hates me," or "My horse is out to get me," or "My horse is difficult," or "My horse is this." Um, it shifted how I see that in people too because I think it's a little different, because people do need to own themselves, but sometimes you can realize that someone being difficult I think this even goes back to the communication with clients. Like, people being difficult are not always trying to be difficult, they just don't have certain skills or they're missing certain things, and of course, we can draw boundaries. Things are not acceptable, um, like your horse kicking you or doing something, but usually you need to figure out why. Why is that happening? It's not just they
Mhm.
decided one day that they're gonna be difficult. Something's going on with them, um, and so you sort of take it back to a lot of your management, and you look at what's going on, to support that and change that.
Yeah. I do think that's super important for anyone who has a horse to remember. I remember, years ago I had a mare named Whiskey and that's who I boarded at Gray Oaks and you were the first trainer to say, she's not trying. I mean, she would take off with me all the
Yeah.
time and you were the
Yeah, it's
first one.
weird to think that I thought that back then without being interested in what I am now, like, I did tell I'm like, "She's not being difficult."
Yes, you were the first person to every other trainer that I had before that would say, "She's a mare, she's an asshole, she, is being mean, whatever." You were the first trainer who said, "She's not trying to be bad, she's probably in pain." And
Mhm,
I like that was one of the things that kicked off my mindset shift with horses. It's like behavior is usually a result of pain or discomfort or maybe fear, frustration from
mhm.
them, and we can't get frustrated trying to, like, rein that in or fix it, you know? So I actually really attribute a lot of my mindset shifts to how I've seen you shift things even before you started this business, and, it's interesting now you have a digital-based virtual business and a physical in-person business. What would you say has been the biggest way that you've had to think about maybe marketing the 2 differently or separately? Do you find that you have to have
Mhm.
different marketing strategies for marketing a virtual business versus an in-person business?
Yeah, I actually find the digital is so much easier. Um,
Really?
in
I thought you were
person,
gonna say the opposite. Oh my gosh,
no,
okay.
because I think the digital has created like, even when we don't do it so well,
Even
you
when we
you
take 3 months off from
yeah,
posting,
when I
it's
haven't
only
literally posted
over.
in months because it's been too hard to, but, I feel like it has more reach and your audience is bigger, and while you do need to know kind of who your ideal client is, like, you're more likely to hit them as long as you're putting yourself out there,
Yeah.
and creating enough messaging that they go, "Oh, I wanna message that person."
Mhm.
And I think the word of mouth is cool because it sort of spread out and, people all across the country are recommending us. So we're getting different pockets of people. I think I have realized when you have local people, if you don't have like right now, because positive reinforcement is like very different from anything I've done, like my old horse contacts are not really like I don't have a network.
Yeah, that's
And I need
interesting.
to be building that. And where I do see I do have like the person will recommend me and then that's sort of where my next client comes from and different things. Um, or I've attracted a few people for classes and then they kind of pass that along. I need to sort of be able to grow that. Um, and I am definitely more introverted in the sense that I can be outgoing and I can talk to people, but it's super draining. So to me, to have time to network and talk to people and show up for a lot of events is kind of challenging for my personality. So I'm still sort of working on that, um, letting it be probably what I learned from White Stallion Studio that I'm applying here is that I'm just letting things sort of grow and making adjustments as they come and not overly like I don't know what it was about the time when we started this where it just never felt like this like it didn't feel like this intense like oh my gosh we need to do this or we're going to miss it or there was
Sure.
no like FOMO missing out like it sort of
Yeah.
just built very
Yes.
nicely um where we had a few clients and then suddenly we're like packed
Yeah.
but it happened over a stretch and it never felt I guess overwhelming or too taxing so I'm not feeling like I need to make it or break it like
Mm.
it's okay to just sort of start something up and if it's not successful right away like okay that's feedback that's not that like don't do it anymore um all or nothing type thing it's just like okay shift something and see what happens and try that now which can be tiring but it's also what business is. I mean we've seen that with a lot
Sure.
of people like kind of thinking they're going to do one thing then sort of doing something else and then
Mhm.
finally working out I don't know.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that because I think when you can accept that things may not blow up right away. We even aside from the business side of things with, being booked out or having a lot of clients, there's so much pressure now that we see on
Mhm.
social media of posting something, having it go viral, having multiple pieces of content go viral. And I think it's trained our minds to live in this world of wanting that instant gratification, which can be nice. But I think a lot of times that might have some strategy behind it, but also might just happen as a total fluke accidentally. And
Yep.
I think we all almost go into starting a business with the expectation like it's going to blow up, it's going to be great, this is going to be the piece of content that finally gets me there. But I think it can be so freeing to accept that if that doesn't happen right away, that's okay, because a slow build, I mean, it took me 3 years to grow Farm and Fur together to finally take it full time. It wasn't something that
Mhm.
just happened instantly overnight. So when you think about where you want to go next with the positive reinforcement and clicker training, where do you see that business evolving? And is it something that you think will just kind of continue to shift as maybe needs change? Where do you hope to grow that to at some point? Is it clinics, more one-on-ones? Is it maybe even going virtual?
Um, Probably not virtual. I think that even for this business, maybe some of that relaxation has come from like we know there's like a certain person we want to serve and I want clients, especially for the horse stuff, I want people who want it and who are ready for it. Um, 'cause even some of our design clients, that's been the most positive experience is when the person
Yes.
is sort of like, they're there already. They have a lot of the stuff kind of in their mind, and we're just taking it and implementing it for them. But, like, success to me is not always about money or and it's more about, like, intentionality and having, like, smaller number of connections. So where I see that and I've seen other horse trainers get really burnt out with just different things, so definitely, like, it's nice to have the graphic design to be a main staple so I can sort of keep my horse stuff what I want it to be,
Yeah.
and I don't have to push myself to
Mm.
take on things I don't want or, um, just serve every single person. Like, it's not
Yeah.
for I think I'm realizing it's not for every single person, um, and that's we definitely learned that, I think. So it's like the life lessons all coming to fruition in, like, trying to do something else in terms of, like, I think, yes, I don't know that our goal is ever to go viral in a sense, even
Yeah.
though we've touched places that, we're international, like, people in other countries
Mhm.
have hired us, like, in different
Yeah.
things, but it's not, like, always the main goal. It's more, like, the enjoyment of the actual people we connect with, um, versus so I think it just comes down to, like, what people think is success or how they feel they
Yes.
want to be. Some people I think do wanna be famous, and I think I don't have that desire to be famous. I know, like, I work with my trainer is very well known and, um, stuff like that, and I don't really have a desire to do that. I like to be more
Mhm.
supportive. I do know I have a good teaching, like, ability, um, but I just don't feel, like, overly needy to, like, tell every single person about it. I mean, if you wanna
Yeah.
hear about it, I wanna tell you about it, but, I think I wanna keep it sort of for people who are ready and for people I wanted that in-person experience because with clicker training, it is so new.
Mhm.
Um, I had the ability to go to my trainer's farm, and while I'd clicker train dogs, clicker training horses is very different, and so I mean, her whole course. I even checked out some other courses and watched a lot of online videos. It's sort of like the equivalent of I mean, we don't think about it, but our lesson horses are already experienced horses when we're learning to ride them. Like, we
Mhm.
aren't riding untrained horses, and then as you move up, getting to ride a Grand Prix horse or getting to ride a horse with experience, it gives you some of those skills and some of those things you get to learn later, like, a little bit sooner.
Right.
Um, and I think I wanted to provide that in terms of I have horses people
Mhm.
can work with safely. I have people like, my horses are more experienced now, doing it for, like, 5 4 or 5 years. So they can serve a little bit as a school horse. I think a lot of people just don't know what it is or don't know what it's about, and it is so different from traditional training and stuff
Mm.
that I don't think people would get to know it otherwise. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that's been one of the biggest challenges in growing your business? Is it that there's just such a lack of education and it's just still so new to people? Is that one of the biggest challenges you found? And what do you think is the key to kind of overcoming that? Is it education? Is it the demo videos that you show all the time? Or maybe you feel like you're still figuring that out a little bit?
Probably figuring it out. I definitely think just playing around with how I'm positioning myself and helping people understand it. Because I think some people do have an idea of what it is, and then I'm teaching them, and they're sort of like, "Wait, what? This is not what I thought it was." Um, so getting into the minds of like what people are looking for, what their expectations are, but I think just being a little better about putting myself out there in person. I mean, online is one thing,
Mm.
connecting with a lot of people, but I think that, just getting to show up. in spaces with a different idea, not being nervous to, like, talk to people that I've known for a long time and say, like, "I'm doing something different now."
Yeah.
Um, but also, like, invite people in, like, I've been trying to figure out how to have, like, just, like, open houses or things people can just come in to be easy. Because I think sometimes I know right now, I mean, a lot of people don't have extra money to spend, and committing to
Mhm.
something they're not sure about is not, helpful. So I think just trying to be a little more community minded first and then
Yeah.
business, like, after. I mean, that's kinda how I learned horse stuff. I followed my trainer around like a dog. Like, I just attached myself to different people that I wanted to emulate and,
Yeah.
sort of, um, learned by osmosis, just some things. And I know there's people out there like that. I mean, I've connected with just people. I think that the people who want to do this type of training are spread out across the country, which is why
Yeah.
virtual has been really accessible to people. But I also keep seeing people looking in groups like, is there a trainer in this
Mhm.
area? Because I really want that in-person connection. Like,
Yes.
after 2020, like, everybody sent the virtual courses off, and I'm not saying they're bad. I think they're great. I love that I can go back. I have a lot of actually, like,
Mhm.
body work and hoof things, and I can go back and I can reference them. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I personally like learning from a person. I like
Yes.
talking to them. I like seeing their experience. So I know there's people out there that are like that. So I just need to sort of put that out there and
Yeah.
the people will come. So,
Yes, and, in both businesses, you've always been targeting a niche audience, so you're kind of becoming an expert in building 2 niche businesses, and I do think that that is always such a great way to figure out how you can provide value to a specific community because, back when we started Farm and Fur, we in the very beginning, we really didn't have a lot of projects to post about, so all of our content was education and value driven. This was before ChatGPT, where you could figure out how to structure your website or how to build a color
mhm,
palette, how to source fonts. We did so much of that education for our clients. So I think that's always such a great way to kind of build that trust, no matter what type of business you're starting, is just figuring out how you can provide value early on. When you think about your 2 different businesses, and this next question can apply to both of them if you want to answer for both, or it can apply to either one. If you were talking to a fellow equestrian entrepreneur, what is the number one thing that you would want them to pull away from your journey as kind of that most important thing or piece of advice that you want people to know you for?
mhm. I guess it's just that you really can make anything successful if you kind of put your mind to it and find people that will give you the right skills, um, to do so. Because I think we've seen, like, we come across a lot of brands and things that I've never heard of or didn't know people needed, and I'm always surprised. And I guess, like, I grew up with people telling me art wasn't really a job and stuff like that, and I really think nowadays, like, creativity and, like, with social media, it has created an avenue to kind of do anything or create any product. Is everything gonna be perfectly successful? No, but if you don't kind of keep trying, like, if you don't take the shot, you're not gonna get the
Mhm.
payout eventually. I
Yeah.
know on a couple entrepreneur, like, things I've went to, that was, like, the main messaging was that, like, failure is not the only difference between people who fail and make it is that people stop trying, and you just kinda have to try and see, and if you have, like, an interest or something you think is a good idea, I bet there are people out there who want to invest in that or do that, and you can make it successful. You may just have to play around with it or figure out what way it serves people best, but really, like, the sky's the limit. You don't have to do what the only things that are college majors, that's the only jobs you can do. It's not true anymore, like, you can pretty much do anything.
Yeah. I love that answer, and actually, you touched on something that I wasn't expecting. Kind of that, the idea of not being afraid of failure. That was going to be my ending question, but now I have a follow up because I want to know. You mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and even just in your last response, that at the time when you were younger, you either felt or as though or people told you that art wasn't a real job, but you never let that be something that stopped you from pursuing it. So, can you think of where you maybe got that confidence from? Or is that also just something that's so innate in your personality to not accept no for an answer and just truly believe in yourself?
I wish I could say I was that confident. I think it just that the horse stuff and the art stuff just kept getting brought back to me, and I couldn't deny it anymore. I just had to be like, "I need to do this stuff because this stuff is what keeps showing up. This stuff is what I'm good at. I keep getting opportunities to do it. I do keep getting like, as many people maybe didn't affirm it, there were still people that did say, like, "Hey, you're good at this," or,
Yeah.
um so I think it's just like, yeah, being I think I am maybe a persistent person, so maybe it's not so
Mm,
much confidence, but I just sort of I do feel like I'm willing to struggle. I'm willing to kinda push for things if I feel like they're important enough. I don't feel strongly about a lot, but the things I do, to me, I'm, like, able to sort of latch onto and
yeah. Yeah, and I think if you feel strongly about something, it's a sign that it's worth pursuing. And I think now we, just as human beings in general, tend to try to stray away from things that feel difficult or feel hard or challenging. And I think what I'm going to take away from this episode is that you really need to trust your gut and to just do what kind of keeps coming back to you and what feels really important and what you're really passionate about. So, thank you for sharing both of your stories with us today.
you're welcome.